Hello everyone, my name's Robbie Brown and I'm the Healthy Plate, Healthy Planet Manager for Acterra. We're a San Francisco Bay Area based nonprofit. And this program focuses on creating community-based solutions to lower our collective carbon footprint. So my work specifically revolves around plant-forward eating, wasted food, and creating sustainable experiences and opportunities with food. Today I'm super excited to be walking you through how to make a plant-based crunchy wrap. We're going to be incorporating sustainable ingredients into this dish. We're going to learn how to properly store these ingredients to prevent food waste, and most of all, make sure we're cooking in a healthy environment. Now you may be wondering, why are all of these ingredients plant-based? That's because animal-based foods compared to plant-based foods typically are more carbon intensive and worse for the environment. And in the animal industry, there tends to be excessive water usage, pollution, deforestation, and the mistreatment of animals and human beings. For this dish, we'll be using two types of plant-based proteins, pinto beans and silken tofu. The silken tofu and the pinto beans will need to be kept in airtight containers. The tofu will need to be in the fridge, and the raw pinto beans can be kept in a pantry, but if they are cooked, they will need to be in the fridge as well. So these are the vegetables that we will be using for today. Now we have tomatoes. If they are fresh, make sure they're not stored in the refrigerator because they'll lose some of their sweetness. And then for our peppers, we have a red bell pepper, Anaheim pepper, and arbol chilies. Now for these two types of peppers, only wash them once they're ready to be used. And if you're not using them, make sure they're in a breathable bag stored in your refrigerator. The arbol chilies are already dry, so you'll also want these in an airtight container or a breathable bag in your pantry. And then we have our onions and our garlic. Now these two are high in vitamin B and vitamin C. For both of them, you'll want to make sure the outer skin is kept on until you're ready to use them. And then last but not least, we have marinated artichoke hearts. These are marinated in olive oil and some seasonings. And you'll want to make sure these are also in an airtight container if it's been opened, and keep that in your refrigerator. These are the two fruits that we will be using today. We have avocado and lime. Lime is high in antioxidants. Avocado is high in fatty acids. For avocado, if it's not ripe, you can leave it out on the counter or place it next to certain fruits like bananas and it will ripen faster. If it's already ripe and you're not quite ready to use it, make sure you leave it in the refrigerator. And then for our spices, we have salts, we have paprika, cumin, and nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is interesting because it's high in vitamin B. And then we'll also be using tostada shells and flour tortillas. And last but not least, we're going to be using a neutral cooking oil. This is avocado oil. And the reason why we want to use this is because it doesn't burn easily compared to an oil like olive oil. And for cooking today, we will be using an induction cooktop. And here at Acterra, we prefer to use an induction cooktop over a gas cooktop. And there's a couple reasons why. First off, induction cooktops have a longer lifespan. They're more efficient than a gas stove. There's better air quality because it eliminates indoor combustion emissions. And there's no open flame, so that means less residual heat in the kitchen and no fire safety issues. Let's start with the beans. So for convenience, you definitely can use a can of pinto beans. I prefer mine to be homemade. So what I have here is a pound of raw pinto beans. And the first thing you're gonna wanna do is soak these in water. Once your beans have soaked for 24 hours, you're gonna wanna place them in a cooking pot. Then you will add 1 Anaheim pepper, 2 garlic cloves, and half of a white onion. And you'll want the water to get to a boil. Once the water boils, turn the heat down so that it starts to simmer, and then you will add a tablespoon of salt, paprika, and cumin. So your beans will cook for about 3 hours, and once it's all done, it's gonna look like this. If you're not sure if your beans are cooked all the way, just take a couple out and see if they're tender all the way through. So now we're going to cut a red bell pepper, some white onion, and our marinated artichoke hearts for our fajita veggies for this plant-based crunchy wrap. So you'll just wanna julienne cut all of them. And then with the bell pepper, we'll cut the top off like this, and then we'll cut it on the sides. You wanna try to keep the seeds out of the bell pepper that you'll be cooking. So we'll set this aside and throw it in the compost for later. And then like the onions, you'll want to cut these in thin strips. Here we're going to cut these just so they're a little bit smaller, just bite-sized chunks. So I set my oven to broil, and now we're gonna get the veggies ready for the oven. First thing you're gonna wanna do is add some of that neutral oil to the bottom so that the veggies don't stick. And then we're gonna add the veggies to the baking tray. And give it a good shake so it gets some of that oil on there. You add a couple pinches of salt, and then it's ready for the oven. So with this induction hob, I'm gonna set it to medium heat and hit start. And give it about 30 seconds to heat up. While it's heating up, I'm gonna add my neutral cooking oil. I'm gonna use about 3 tablespoons. So we're gonna fry these tomatoes and onions for probably around 4 minutes or so. You'll know they're ready when the tomatoes start to lighten up in terms of their color. Let's take a look and see how they're doing. We're gonna wanna flip them over onto their other side. Let's check these tomatoes one last time. I'd say they're good to go. So I'm gonna scoop them out. And then the onions needed just a little bit more time. Great, and now we will add the garlic and the arbol chilies together. And while they're in here, you're gonna wanna mix them around pretty frequently. Okay, I'm gonna take these out. And if you don't like your salsa to be very spicy, you can put less chilies in. Again, I put in about 12, you could put in maybe around 8, and you'll still get that good flavor without so much heat. Garlic needs just a little bit more time. Great, the garlic should be good to go. So I'm gonna turn off my induction hob. I'm gonna scoop these in the blender, and whatever is left over in the pan can go right in the blender. Last but not least, we're gonna add our dry seasonings. So we have 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast. And we're gonna add our silken tofu, and now we're gonna blend everything together. Great, and we know our salsa is done. If it is all pureed together, it looks nice and smooth to me. The final step before we assemble our plant-based crunchy wrap is to fry our beans. So the first thing you want to do is add some oil. Now the pan is starting to get nice and hot, so I'm gonna add some of the cooked pinto beans to the pan. And then you're gonna want these pinto beans to start to simmer. So what we're gonna want to do next is grab a masher and start pressing on the beans to mash them. So I'm gonna let it cook for about another minute or so. Great, we're good to go. So I'll turn this off and let's make that plant-based crunchy wrap. And one little trick is to microwave your flour tortilla in your tostada shell for about 35 seconds before you start this process. So I grabbed a smaller bowl to outline this smaller tortilla that I am going to cut. And for this extra tortilla that you have, I like to save this for hummus or even dipping it in my salsa for later as a nice snack. Now we're gonna grab our larger flour tortilla and our tostada shell. And with a spoon, you're gonna wanna cover one of the sides of the tostada shell with refried beans. We're gonna add some of the lime juice from the lime, and then we're gonna scoop half of this avocado and place it on top. Great, now we're gonna carefully flip this over. And now with our other side of the tostada shell, we're gonna add our fajita vegetables. And this is where I like to add that creamy salsa that we made earlier. And last but not least, we're gonna grab that smaller tortilla that we cut earlier. So you'll wanna take one end and hold it here, and then grab the next end. And make sure you place your fingers over these folds to keep the crunch wrap together. Great, so now we have a crunch wrap, and the last thing you'll want to do is cook each side so it's nice and brown, and then we're ready to eat. Great, this is our plant-based crunch wrap. I cannot wait to eat this, and if you'd like to learn more recipes like this, please visit us at acterra.org/healthyplate.